Hello YouTube, this is Matt Pullen and I'm going to bring you a video about an opening trap today. The sequence of moves we'll be discussing goes knight f3, d5, b3, c5, and then white is playing e4. And this is known as the Norfolk Gambit. It was developed by Claude Bloodgood, who was famous for holding a lot of chess tournaments in prison and getting his rating very high. So in order to understand what the point of these opening moves are, let's just look a little bit at the Budapest defense, which would start d4, and then black is playing knight f6, and after c4, black plays e5. And it's an attempt to open up the game and try and show that white's move c4 is not a developing move. And in fact, after the move c4, white wishes that he could move his pawn backwards, to provide a way to block this bishop check from b4. And so, white, if he wants an advantage, he will usually take this pawn on e5. And now the Budapest defense would be where black develops his knight to g4, immediately preparing to take back on e5. And black also has another line, the Fedorowicz variation, which involves black not trying to recover the pawn right away, but rather he wants to put a knight on e4 and maintain it there, try to maintain this knight in the center to disrupt white's development. For instance, if white just challenges the knight straight away with knight d2, then black develops a bishop, and he's willing to make this exchange, bishop for knight, in order to keep this functional knight in the center of the board. So, that is the Budapest and Fedorowicz defenses, knight g4 and knight e4. I'm not going to go too much into detail because if you're interested in either of these lines, you can find some good information on Wikipedia. Just Wikipedia these the Budapest defense, and you'll probably find something on the Fedorowicz defense in there too. Wikipedia articles on chess openings are usually pretty detailed. I mean, detailed enough that you could get a general sense of what's going on. But sorry, that was an aside. So let's say white plays knight f3 and b3, which, b3 could potentially lead into a standard chess opening. If white continues with the bishop to b2, and then he plays like e3, and then either goes into some kind of reverse Nimzo with bishop to b5, or he just plays d4, knight d2, bishop d3, going into a Kali system. Or, I guess, alternatively, white could, fianchetto the queen's bishop, and then also fianchetto the king's bishop, and then play c4, and go into a type of ready system. But anyway, if black, so like if knight f6, then bishop e2 is probably the best move. c5, trying to create the center pawn duo right away on d5 and c5, like white would in the Queen's Gambit. This allows white to play the interesting move e4, which, if after pawn takes pawn and knight e5, this is the Fedorowicz, which we just briefly looked at, except for this extra move, pawn to b3. So really, white is playing a reversed defense situation. White could also play this with knight to g5, but it's almost unheard of. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. b3 goes with the knight e5 move better because it allows white to get a piece protecting e5 and in order to maintain his presence in the center. So there are quite a few acceptable moves for black in this position. I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with knight f6. He could also play knight to d7, or he could just play a6 here. That's right, even a6 works. The point being that it's so important for white's development to get the bishop to b5 to challenge these squares that black can afford to spend a whole tempo at this junction to prevent white from playing that move. In fact, that's actually supposed to be the line that takes the Fedorowicz close to busted. If instead of knight d2, white were to just play a3. Again, stopping this bishop to b4 move is so important that white can afford to spend a whole tempo on this. But I mean, it's certainly not a move which would occur to you if you had seen this defense for the first time. Anyway, let's go back to this. So let's say that black is not familiar with the opening that he's in, and he's just looking at the chessboard for the first time. Well, a tactically minded player might notice that white has two hanging pieces. And, what do you do the first time you see something that looks really weird and out of place? You look for a tactical refutation, right? So a lot of players, who are not familiar with this and think that white is just playing garbage are going to play queen d4 right off the bat. And why not? It looks like a healthy move. I mean, this knight is unsupported. This rook in the corner is vulnerable. White doesn't appear to have a move that guards both of these, but he does, and that is where the trap comes in. An atypical tactical pattern to catch your opponent off guard. I mean, that is what a trap is in chess, really. So bishop b2. Again, I told you there was a move that guarded both pieces, and you have to agree, bishop b2 does guard both pieces. So if black doesn't want to lose face and just retreat with the queen, then he's got to take this bishop. And now after knight c3, the door on the trap has closed, and black's queen is dangerously close to being trapped in a lot of these lines. So yeah, if the black queen is trapped, then she'll have to give herself up for the white rook, and then white will have a queen against a rook and bishop. So I mean, there's a little bit of complication here. So if you're going to play this, it pays to know how to play from this position. I mean, the game is certainly not over yet. First of all, let's notice if the queen just tries to run out, like go to a3 and then drop back, then there's a problem with knight c4. It looks like it immediately traps the queen, but it doesn't, because queen a6. And we're temporarily blocking the bishop's access to a6. So this is no good for white. Black is just going to run away with the queen somewhere next. So before we play that move, we have to play another move first. Bishop b5 check. And however black gets out of this check, however he blocks this check, and he does have to block this check because king d8 gets mated. After knight check and knight d5 mate. Admit it, this is the coolest looking checkmate you have seen today. So yeah, he does have to block this. Let's say he plays bishop d7. And now just knight c4. And this queen is, short of squares. I mean, the only real square to go to is b4. But then white just trades and plays a3, and the black queen is toast. So that is not a sufficient way for the black queen to escape. Let's talk about knight f6 here. Say say black just ignores the threat and keeps developing. Well, the immediate knight c4 is best. You could also play bishop b5 check in this position, but it's not as good. So knight c4 traps the queen right away. And there's really only two choices here. Just give up the queen for the rook right away, or he can try bishop g4. Bishop g4 is a counterattack on white's queen. White's queen can't just step away, because if he goes to either of these squares, c1 or b1, the black queen will just exchange. And black will be up a piece. So in this position, the answer is not to play f3, because remember the queen also needs to guard the a1 rook. So black would just take, and then g takes f3, bishop takes f3. Again, distracting the black queen, or distracting the white queen rather, from guarding the a1 rook. So white would play queen takes f3, then queen takes a1 check, king f2. And the black queen is still getting trapped. There's no way for black to prevent white from just moving this bishop out and attacking the queen with the rook on h1, since these knights are cutting off the black queen's escape squares. So in this position, let's just say sample line knight d7, bishop h3, queen takes, and rook b8. This type of position, black has 2 rooks and 2 pawns for the queen, and he has kind of a solid position. It's difficult to attack black in this position, so he probably has enough compensation. But we're going to see several versions of this type of middle game, which are comparatively better for white. So actually, none of that is even necessary in this position, because white can play bishop e2, simply blocking with the bishop. And now, if bishop takes bishop, well, the queen can't take back because the queen is responsible for the rook. The knight can't take back because then, oops, I guess could the knight take back? I forgot there's a knight on f6, so the black queen can't just escape. Alright, well, regardless, I mean, the best move is king takes e2, because it keeps the queen trapped there, and, white is going to win material. So that's an important concept to know, how to deal with this bishop g4 ploy from black. So let's say black plays a move other than knight f6, because knight f6 is kind of pedestrian. Bishop e6 is a better try. Bishop e6, the point is it prevents the white knight from ever going to c4, because black will just exchange. So there is an alternate way to trap black's queen that he has to play against bishop e6, and that is a3, with the idea of just playing rook a2 and executing the queen on b2. So, I don't know, there's really nothing that black can do about this. Say he plays knight d7. The best move is not to play rook a2 right away, because black is just going to take on a2 and then take the knight that's hanging. White could exchange on d7 and then trap the queen. That probably wins as well. But it's best to maintain this knight in the center of the board and just play bishop b5, which is a developing move, which pins the knight and allows white to exchange for the knight and then win the queen. So this is, and there's really no bishop g4, because white can just take it. So yeah, that's how white wins if black tries bishop e6. Knight c6 is the most difficult defense, and the reason, not only does it threaten to take the knight on e5, but also this knight coming into d4 is a major problem sometimes. For instance, let's say white just plays knight c4 right away. Well, this is not good, because of bishop g4, again, this distraction tactic, trying to distract the queen away from a1. And then, we'll see, there's no, if white just takes this, and takes, this is a position where, certainly there's some compensation for a pawn, but not, this is not what white wanted. So white has to try and trap the queen. Bishop e2 is not available in this position, because if bishop takes, king takes, there's knight d4 check, and this is going to be a disaster because the knight is also hitting c2, which allows black's queen to escape. So that's why knight c6 is much better than knight f6. So f3 is forced, and then e takes f, And then there's knight takes b2 would be a very bad move on account of f takes g, threatening white's queen, also threatening to make a new queen. So g takes f, and then bishop takes f. And again, white is forced to go into this, two rook for queen middle game by taking on f3, allowing queen takes a1 check, king f2. And then here, white is preparing to run away, but black, if he plays rook d8 is a much more useful move than having a knight on f6. So like bishop h3, queen takes, and this is a position where black is slightly more aggressively placed than he was in that middle game before. But let's go back. There's a better move than knight c4. Actually, bishop b5. Again, developing a piece off of the back rank and neutralizing black's knight is the best move here. So now the threat is knight c4. And what's going on here? If knight f6, in this position, white can actually play rook b1 first, keeping the knight on e5 to prevent bishop g4. So rook b1, and then if this queen goes here to a3, then the knight comes to c4. So this is slightly more accurate in this particular position to play rook b1. Let's see, there is bishop e6. Whoops, that's the main line. a6. What's happening on a6? White just exchanges for check, plays knight c4, and black is able to go in for this type of a the bishop g4 middle game. But here, because of the crippled black pawns, it's very, very difficult for black. So f3 takes, and then queen takes a1, king e2. Slightly more accurate than king f2 because there's no knight that can come in here. And the king performs a useful function in guarding the d pawn. So this queen has to take on h1, and here there's already a significant threat of queen takes on c6, and these knights hopping into the queen side and trying to exploit these double pawns. Knights are really great at exploiting double pawns which have limited mobility. So I don't know. King d7 is not really possible because of queen to or knight to b6 check. So I guess he's got to play rook c8. But then just knight b6, and in order to stay on this, we need to play rook c7. And now this knight goes to the corner. And again, in order to stay on this, we need rook c8. And then the rook is not threatening to take, because then white would take on c6 and then take the rook. So white has enough time to bring this other knight in here. And if this knight reaches b6, then this rook is going to have no place to go to defend the pawn on c6. So white's queen is just going to burst into the queen side, and black has no defenses over there. So already that's a forced win for white in the a6 line. Bishop e6. Again, the point being to exchange for any knights that come to c4. But it's actually best in this position to go in another direction. We've looked at lines where white plays solely to trap the black queen, but here white is winning back his piece, and if black takes back, then the bishop check and takes the rook in the corner. So this is a situation where white has regained his piece, and he has the far more active pieces. So this is not going to end well, I think, for black. If bishop d7 to break this pin, then just knight takes a7. So some lines could go, if queen a3 happens, then white can exchange and then bring this other knight back, knight ab5. And the black queen is going to be safe. She'll just retreat somewhere. But then white could just play conventional chess, castle, and then d3, try and break open this file where the black king is. So surely white has an advantage here. Whoops. A6. So threatening the bishop, which is going to give a discovered attack. So knight d4. Again, we're going back to this idea of trapping the queen because white is just allowing black to take the bishop. So pawn takes bishop, knight d takes b5. This takes away the a3 square. So white in this position might be threatening just rook b1, I suppose. So bishop g4. I don't know. Let's look at what happens in this bishop g4 version. Again, white is forced to play f3, and as we've seen before, e takes f, g takes f, bishop takes f, queen takes f3, queen takes a1 check, king e2, and now I guess if the there's no knight on c4, so I guess technically black could escape. I don't have that move in there. Let's just see what happens here. New variation. Well, it's always just knight c7 check. I wonder if queen takes b7 is stronger. Queen takes b7, threatening this rook. Also, certainly looks unpleasant to force the king to come out here. I don't know. Well, probably just this, because I mean, black's king is very naked on the queen side, and white has just won a rook. So he's actually even in this position, because black already took one of white's rooks. So both sides have two pieces and a rook, but black's king is under heavy fire. So that is a all right. I think that's how you're supposed to meet the queen b2. So queen takes h1, and then we see this threat to take on b7 and also to play knight c7 check. And it looks as though there's a way to guard both of those by castling queenside. But no, this is actually a winning position if white knows what he's doing. Just queen e4. And this idea of queen to e5 threatening mate is very difficult to stop. So black is going to have to give up, I think, at least two more pawns in order to stop this this mating attack of white. So I hope I've shown you some exciting variations that will educate you into what's going on in the Norfolk Gambit, specifically this trap that happens after knight e5, queen d4. I think you have to find just the right opponent to play this against. You have to find an opponent who is, who's sharp enough with tactics that they're not going to miss this move, but yet unfamiliar with the specifics of this opening. So I don't know, maybe I tried it out in a few internet games on the ICC as a guest, and finally I found someone to fall for it, and he was like a 1600. So yeah, this has been a video about the queen d4 trap in the Norfolk Gambit. And I hope you have a good day, and I will talk to you at some point in the future.